Aloha everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sincerely Alana. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about having difficult conversations with kids with my sister, Alyssa, Michelle of Godoy.
Hi, I'm your sister.
So do you want to share a little bit about yourself first before we get too far into this convo?
I'm 16, about to turn 17, so still pretty young. Yeah. I'm a high school student. I'm a senior. I play tennis, dance hula my whole life. Yeah, just look up to my sister.
Today I'm going to be sharing with you guys some tips that I personally use. So I'm not a parent yet, but I am the oldest sister of my family. I'm also the oldest cousin on like both sides for a whole generation.
I didn't know that.
So difficult conversations can range from anything like, you know, what's been currently going on, what this whole season has been about, with talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, BLM, coronavirus, and racism, like just very difficult and heavy topics. But difficult conversations can also be just talking about feelings and how a child copes with something that just recently happened in their personal life, that although it doesn't seem big and scary to you, it might mean the world to them. So the first thing that I always try to do, if you are the person that's reaching out to the child to talk about a specific topic, like for me, for instance, I sat down with both Alyssa, Elima, our youngest sister, and Robert, our younger brother, the other day, last week I think, and talked to them about Black Lives Matter and what's been going on with everything, kind of trying to summarize what I've been talking about this whole season. But I always recommend that if you are the person that pulls them to the side, let them know ahead of time before you have the conversation. Schedule a time during the day where they're prepared to have a conversation and be receptive to it, and also have that conversation in a safe environment, whether it's your room, it's their room, or if we had a tree house, we probably would have had a conversation in a tree house, like somewhere where they just feel calm, cool, and collected, you know? The next tip that I recommend, I always ask, when we start the conversation, I always ask, what are your views? What do you think, or what do you know that is going on? Don't interrupt. This is a big thing when having these conversations. Be there to listen and not to just strictly impose what you're trying to say or what your feelings are. Just open the conversation with their thoughts, their opinions, and then from there address the facts of the whole situation, and then you can share your opinions or your personal feelings about it.
Agreed. I appreciate being listened to and being heard, and I appreciate especially when you're talking to the kids and all three of us, just simplifying the matter as much as possible, especially when we talked about Black Lives Matter, just making it as simple and easy for them to understand.
Yeah. I always love to ask open-ended questions after I share the facts or how I feel. You know, how do you feel about this? What is your opinion on this? What would you do if you were in a similar situation, or what would you do if you saw somebody in this situation? So just kind of getting them to critically think for themselves and put themselves in other people's shoes. I think that's extremely important, especially when talking about things like racism or being sick in a hospital because you're affected by COVID. Like heavier topics, I feel like it's important not to scare them, but to get them to try to help them gain some perspective on what the overall situation is. So that way, if it ever does happen, or if they know somebody who's going through it, they already have thought about a response or how they would feel, and so they're not as scared or ill-prepared to handle it. Does that make sense? So the first tip, like I said, if you're the person pulling them aside and you want to have the conversation, schedule that time so you don't catch them off guard, and have it in a safe and comfortable environment. Number 2, always ask them what they believe is happening or what they think is going on before jumping into number 3, the facts and your own personal opinion. From there, continue the conversation by having open-ended questions and continuing dialogue and asking them questions about how they feel. And 5, have those questions be something that gets them to critically think for themselves and to help them gain some perspective. So that's 6 tips. My final tip is to end the conversation very lovingly. If it's a scary topic, like when we had our conversation about racism and BLM, you know, it's scary for them to sit there and talk about the riots and the protests and everything that's going on. So always end the conversation on a positive note and just reassure them that it's okay. And if you have any questions, you can always come to me. I always end the conversation with reassuring that I'm always here if they ever have any questions or if they see something that they need to talk about. But yeah, some other just like general, I think everybody needs to hear or, you know, implement when they're having conversations with anybody. Practice mindful listening. Don't listen to respond. And yeah,
I think when you're talking, especially to younger kids, especially like when we talk to them, try to keep in mind like the length of how long you're talking to them. Don't try to drag, like the longer it is, the more likely that they're not going to listen.
Exactly.
And the more that they're going to start shutting down. So try to...
Short, sweet, simple. I think that really does depend for the age range too. Vocabulary, the words that you use when you talk to them, and the amount of time that you're able to talk to them will definitely make an impact. Oh, so I don't have 6, I have quite a few. Another thing that I always try to do is have them have like key takeaway points. So like at the end of the BLM conversation that we had, I literally asked them, what are the 5 things that you are going to take away from this conversation or you think are most important from our conversation? And so we sat there and we made a list and we wrote it down, and for the next week they hung it up on their wall and they practice it. We continue the conversation. That's the thing.
More like times you practice having serious conversations, the easier it's gonna get for them, especially as they're getting older and more serious things happen.
Yeah, those tips were very specific to having really difficult conversations, but these also apply to the difficult conversations in regards to their feelings and more personal matters that aren't on such a societal scale. I know my sister and I have had quite a few difficult or rather uncomfortable conversations when it comes to friendships, relationships. I gave her the sex talk. You know, just kids are curious and you don't know what you don't know. Shout out Alex for always saying that all the time to me. But you don't know what you don't know. So if a child is curious about something, like I know for me personally, I want to be the person that my siblings can trust to come to and can confide in, because I learned a lot of things the hard way and I didn't have that like authority, big sis, big brother figure to go to all the time. So my lovely sister, what has been something that you appreciate most out of our conversations or that you value the most?
Just like what you said earlier, just staying calm, making sure that like when we talk our voices are not being raised. That really makes me feel like secure. Like just the more that we are calm and the more conversations that we have that are like normal, just literally a conversation, the more willing I am to talk to you and open up to you. And just being open-minded for sure.
That's a big thing I think too, especially for teenagers, because they're with younger kids. Like I've noticed with Robert and Elima, they have an opinion, but it's not like a strong opinion. By the time you're a teen, like you're developing your true sense of self, your morals, the values that might not always align with what your family's values are. So for the teens, I think it's very important that you listen, you don't interrupt, and that you remain very open-minded. And even though they might say something that you don't agree with, don't intervene yet. Just kind of make a mental note of it and say, okay, I need to come back to this and listen to what they're saying. Like, truly listen to understand and get their perspective on it, because they might truly be saying or meaning the same thing that you mean. It's just a different way that they're saying it. But even if it is something that's different, you should be open to hearing that and then sharing your opinion on why you believe something different.
I also like how we can agree to disagree.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, like we don't always have to have the same answer or opinion on everything.
I don't know, I feel like even though we might not agree, you still understand what I'm saying, and so you kind of implement, like, or you think about it when it happens in real life, or when whatever situation occurs.
Or if like that situation occurs and then I'm like, oh, now I can understand like
how she meant it, or yeah, for sure. Here are my other two lovely younger siblings. What's your name?
Robert.
How old are you?
11.
Speak louder. What's your name?
Evina.
And how old are you?
8.
Okay.
What's in your hand?
Glue.
I can't. Just go like this. Show the camera. Jesus. Okay. So, Robert and Delima, Alyssa and I just made a video about having difficult conversations with kids. Do you remember like a couple weeks ago, when we had the conversation about the protests and COVID?
Yeah.
So, you guys understood what we were talking about, right? Did you feel like you walked away from that conversation knowing more about the situation?
Yeah.
So, Robert, what do you think, because conversation-wise, how the conversation was going, what do you remember from it, and what do you appreciate the most about how we had the conversation?
I liked how they brought us in the room and talked to us nicely about what was going on in the world. I liked how you guys answered our questions and like wrote down stuff that we have to remember.
Do you feel that what the key points that we asked you guys to remember, do you feel that those were important and that you remember them and that you apply them to what's been going on and the people around you?
Yes.
Like, do you like it when I have conversations with you? Do you feel that you can come to me or Alyssa or Alex if you have questions about difficult stuff?
Yeah. Yes.
You guys are the worst people to interview in the whole
Literally.
world. Yeah. Get off me. Get off. Get off.
Yeah.
Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
So I hope this video was helpful, somewhat informational. I think we might have been a little all over the place. I'm really not sure. But I know those tips helped me. I know from you and the other little kids that the conversations that we have are definitely getting somewhere. They're getting somewhere. They're understanding something.
I'm definitely more open to bringing up, like, not even just serious topics, but just like within my life to you. So
having these really difficult, serious conversations helps strengthen relationships and build trust, and I think it just takes our sisterhood to another level.
Like when you say something that like when you bring something to my attention, or just anybody older than me, you know, like Cookie, when somebody older than me brings something to my attention that I may have missed, or that like I might have done something that maybe you shouldn't have done that. At first it's like, ooh, like, ouch. But then it's like, if you don't do it as my sister or as somebody I look up to, who's gonna do it, you know?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I appreciate it, and the more it happens, just the more mature I feel, and the more the easier it gets.
I've definitely seen you mature from our conversations. It's hard, you know, starting convos is hard. Being receptive, I think that's the other thing to talk to kids about and to practice for yourself as an adult or an older person, is practice being receptive and understanding what people tell you and taking criticism. It's hard. Pero
you gotta do it.
You gotta take it sometimes, you know? It just makes you a better person. Thank you guys so so much for watching this episode of Sincerely Alana. I hope you guys found it helpful. And let me know, what are some difficult conversations that you've had with your younger siblings or the kids that are in your life, and how did it go? Also, let me know if you used any of these tips after watching this video and if it helped at all. Thank you, Sissy.
Thanks for having me. I've been around since season 1, but not in one yet, so
maybe we'll do a sister video later. Who knows?
yeah.
Anywho, be sure to spread peace, love, and positivity. Mahalo.